Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. That'll do. I'm submitting this again, as always, to the, to the public trust of the Commonwealth of Australia and the Greater Commonwealth region as a commitment to stability in the overall Commonwealth and the former British Empire. That should do it. And I've called this conflicted holding. I'm not a fan of treating citizens of any region as morons or idiots. I understand there's a part of this that has been perhaps necessary, in previous epochs and previous days, centuries. But the truth is what I believe in, and I think an informed population will serve better and will create a more harmonious arrangement. And that's why I use my particular story, my family's story, in order to paint a picture of what I see happening in the country. So basically, there's Australia, which before there was Australia, there was colonies. And these colonies federated to become the Commonwealth of Australia, a constitutional monarchy. So Australia is a big old place. It's people want it, basically. People want this. Now, considering these colonies were colonies under the British Empire, they had Union Jacks. There was creation of the Commonwealth. We have an Australian flag, which proudly displays a Union Jack at the top left. That's to clearly say what's going on. It's not subtle. It's there proudly, and it is an unbroken connection to all expeditions and projects undertaken under that banner of the Union Jack. And basically, as I've stated, it doesn't make sense because it's blue and you can't see the Southern Cross at night during the day, so it should be black. It should be a black flag, and it's to symbolise looking up at your Union Jack flying at night and seeing the Southern Cross behind it. And I guess the 7-pointed star is the so-called coalition between the colonies. I'm not really exploring radical thoughts, and I find it best to simplify down to these things and to get out of this progressive delusion that we have anything other than this. It is a project that is in constant or under constant attack, and to falsely claim anything otherwise is you'd better have some pretty firm explanations as to what exactly you're doing. So, right, I've got a New Testament Bible. This is a tiny little one, and I've got an English dictionary. Now, this is pretty much the extent of the tools that we use to create our Commonwealth. Now, I'll add here that the only thing different that's taking place right now this morning is that I have a laptop in front of me and a video camera. And this should be not seen as anything else, anything other than just a distribution of verbal communication. And it's basically just so I can, avoid having to travel. There's been a lot of talk about how this is new. This isn't new. This is the same as it's always been. It's never been any different. It's just there is an attempt to colonize this arrangement with revolutionary thought. And I would like the dialogue to be plain. This is a Christian Church of England Bible. And the English language, we have an Islamic invasionary force, which has happened over and over and over and over and over again. And in combination of that, we have a United States Republic mutineer cohort that also have their eyes on Australia. My claim is that the United States empire, as they like to call it, has never been anything like that. It's never been successful in absolutely anything, not even of settling its own region. So, and then we have a communist ideology, which can be easily described as a radical, dangerous ideology. We cannot escape the fact that we are here. This has already all happened. We've had federation. We've had 125 years of federation and of defence and of construction of this region. And I'm getting a little bit sick of calling regions such as the United States allies under the amount of constant attack. The United States needs to look at its own boundaries, and it needs to show the world that it can cash the checks that its forefathers wrote with the blood of Englishmen. Really. There is no greater threat when we see a clear explanation of this recent sovereign citizen phenomenon. It should 100% be recognised as a United States revolutionary concept on Crown land, on British Empire soil, and will be retaliated against in the same fashion. So there is a problem, but it's who's leading the conversation. Our so-called Prime Minister, under his watch, there is an appeasement to these radical forces. And because of his own unbelieving, because of his own aspirations, basically the Prime Minister, in my opinion, is attempting to create his own George Washington situation. And basically, to put it bluntly, it's not the time nor the place. There's too many. It's almost like Australia at the moment. The Commonwealth of Australia, as established in 19, is a man with ropes tied to all his limbs, and he is attempted to be dragged and his limbs ripped from him by the Chinese Communist delusion, the United States Republican delusion, by our Prime Minister's Republican delusions of his own, and the Labor Party's communist delusions of its own. And there shouldn't be any question that this man I speak of, this Australian Commonwealth, is an Englishman or British. And I really feel like his voice is not being heard for some reason. Perhaps his more civilized approach of dialogue, of historical reference, of calm exposure of these radical ideals is being kind of overshadowed by an ever-increasing cohort of individuals that wish to terrorize us into submission. That's probably the definition of terrorism right there. We didn't colonize this land with terrorism. You know, the 100 years of celebratory Australianness would hardly be called terrorism. And it's amazing to me every day when I wake up and I see how easily that is cast aside. There's a truth, I think, about the entire civilized world that needs to be recognized in this moment. And unfortunately, our current Prime Minister is unable to do it because he just simply does not have the lived experience of a broad enough set of references to accurately inform the Australian public of this moment in time. And this moment in time is a long time coming. It's far older than the British Empire. It's far older than the Roman Empire. It's far older than the Greek Empire. And this is why it's so difficult to land on, and why it's so easily swamped by the raucous, loud, mobbing crusaders for their own particular cause. Because that is always how it has been, except for now. So I started this by saying that, look, this is no different. I have an English dictionary. I have a Church of England Bible. I have my voice, and I could be sitting in front of the Prime Minister right now. And I am. I am doing that. That's where we need to land at. But what's actually taking place is there has been a throughout my family's journey here and their journey beforehand on the British Isles, the story of my particular family, this doesn't mean there's anything special or unique. It's just a story, and this is just happening at a particular time with access to certain technologies that are new. And I'm trying to find the balance between these technologies not being treated as new, as novelty, but finding the kernel of truth that is hidden within removing the abstractions of the internet, removing the abstractions of the laptop, of the news, of the constant bombardment of concepts. And basically what I'm trying to say is that this is and agricultural is actually the wrong term, but I'm going to use it because it's probably the best. This is an agricultural revolution on planet Earth. And it hasn't happened. Well, it has happened. We talk about the agricultural revolution. That happened 10,000 years ago. The problem is, yesterday when I spoke about a snowball and that I'm being chased down a hill by a snowball, well, all of our ancestors for 10,000 years have been chased down the hill by this particular snowball. This is the agricultural revolution. It started in the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates River in the Middle East, right? And this is us now, and this is me down here, and I've run in front of it, and well, I've placed an explosive here. And I'm going to blow that agricultural revolution up. And I'm going to end a 10,000-year journey of a Semitic tradition. And I'm going to return the voice of authority to the people that are actually in connection with the necessary elements of life. And that means people that understand every single other thing apart from anything that has ever gone on in a city. So it's a complete inversion. And it's going to be slow. It's going to be calm. It's going to be controlled. It's going to be capitalistic. It's going to renew the earth that the damage, from the damage that this snowball has caused. No one is responsible. It's like a domino. It was set off, and then the advantages of all proponents of agricultural has gone through a period of evolution that led to so agricultural revolution. This would be, I basically would call that the Enlightenment, the civilized enlightenment, which is what I'm using. I'm not throwing away what was learned and what was learnt and what was created and all these things through the Enlightenment, and like all manifestations of the Enlightenment, because in reality it's been like this, is like Egypt, Greece, and this is just Western, so Chinese and other regions have similar trajectories. I'm just not as familiar. Roman, British, American, you could say like that. At the height of all our Enlightenment periods, where civilized humanity, does create wonderful things: music, science, art, architecture, like infrastructural technology, all wonderful. So I'm not discarding anything learnt during these periods, But we are now clearly here in which our cities now resemble, culturally anyway, they resemble war zones. It's just the war concept. So, if we take classic things like the Roman Empire, okay, well, they put lead pipes in. That was like an accident. There wasn't a concept where, like, it wasn't like the Goths or the Scythians or the barbarians or something came in and convinced the Romans to put lead pipes. We weren't at that level. Now we're at that level completely. We're completely encircled by warring tribes and empires and forgotten empires and peoples and religions. And the war zones are our cities. And so it is our cities that need to be categorized as destructive zones. And this was present, like, within cities. There were regions of sin, because those wishing to civilize the regions just found out that if you didn't have places where sinful behavior was allowable, then you actually created a larger problem. And so the way we would have zones, we would have zones of nightlife, we would have red light districts, we would have, in previous things, opium, all these things. So there were places where you could go and be an absolute degenerate animal. Now, the problem is, because of the distribution and the invasiary in distribution of these, a lot of times in the most horrific cases, these are embedded into, literally into systems of care, which is hell on earth. That is horror on earth. And so the only way to appear to be in control of this chaos is to ignore everything. It's just self-serving governance, and perhaps rebut backwards and forwards a concept that really is nowhere near the pinnacle of the threats that we face, in order to prevent a crash or a total realization of this. So it's basically like every residence now is under siege within a city. And if there was ever anything, a description of what civilization attempts to do, it is to collectively protect its inhabitants from external threats, and this just isn't it. So we are not in civilization. And that's the message that a prime minister would be saying, but he can't, because he's not really a prime minister. He's a salesman for chaos. Now, luckily, we have a constitutional monarchy. We have a country here. It was established in 1901. The country does not claim within its writings to be the capital cities, the urban zones, because that would have been ridiculous, because it's an entire gigantic place. And these were just they just happened to be the cities that stemmed from, basically, from colonies, from encampments. And if you compare this to other regions in the world where this stemmed from, then this never would have been considered as where we'd be now. In 1901, I can guarantee you that nobody, but perhaps they thought there would be the 6 major capital cities, but they would have been imagining a diverse landscape of townships and you know hubs of agriculture and resource industrial everything. That's not what we have. We have 6. And is it 6? It's like Canberra, Adelaide, Perth, Hobart, 6 or 7 metropolitan regions that are war zones. And so this is the only way to progress forward. We don't need any involvement, Mr. Trump, and we'd appreciate if you'd send a clear message to your citizens that they should basically cease all expeditionary interruption from their region, from your purview, from the United States. You have the United States. We have tolerated this, but it's getting hard to ignore. So there won't be an American-style revolution here. Because we're not dealing with states, we're dealing with a federal concept. And the majority of our resources, the assets of this country, if you suppose now that the residential market has experienced a tulip mania type event, then this all becomes very easy. We have a clear need to have restriction zones for metropolitan citizens of this country, of this continent. And the only way that anyone should be leaving those zones is if they have a reasonable reason for doing that, i.e. work or education or something like that. And this should be a documented thing, because we need to prevent the spreading of dangerous concepts to the greater region of Australia. There is nothing stopping the United Commonwealth from establishing new zones within the continent of Australia with a new vision, for the first time taking into account the very extremely important position of those who are dealing with the mammoth task of re-establishing a sustainable primary producing industry. And so this is like a bank. So the majority of our metropolitan regions are indebted degenerates, and the Bank of Australia, or the Bank of the Commonwealth, has a task ahead of it, and so it needs to steer away from mass production of commodity, so however and wherever and whenever, to kind of appease the ravenous hunger coming from the metropolitan regions, and it needs to do what is needed to be done and responsibly transition our entire country to a working environment. And so immediately this will produce employment, but the the cart is leading the horse here. We cannot have the metropolitan inhabitants setting the exchange for this project, and it's a numbers thing. It's mostly there's a mentality towards people in regional areas from the metropolitan citizens. A lot of them who have just arrived, a lot of them who have fled far worse manifestations of this ultra urbanized phenomenon. And so we need to create, and I've called this a canal before. It's called the treacherous, not treacherous. Maybe it was treacherous, the treacherous canal, or I'll have to go and look. I did name it. And this needs to encompass all finances, all legal, because we have two very different tasks to do. If you are currently a citizen or an owner or inhabitor of a metropolitan region, and say Perth, when I talk about urban sprawl, if you're in suburbia, that's the metropolitan region. If you are unable to feed and clothe and defend yourself from your property and cover your commitment to your mortgage, then you are in this group. And basically what it means is that the current cost of living crisis that you're all experiencing is nothing. It's like you are going to be paying a factor of 10, 20, 30 times on base commodities that you need to survive. There is no other way to do this. You have created death zones, basically, under the false guise of a kind of technocratic utopia that this is a distribution coming from the United States that needs to be defended against. So it's time to start reevaluating what you feel your role is in Australia. And basically come to terms with the fact that within our technologies and our communication, that these regions held up as idols of mankind's superiority are nothing but palaces of sin. And I'm not trying to be religious when I say sin. It's just the best word to use. Yeah, I could use debauchery. I could use delusion. I could use insanity. If you were to witness any other creature on earth behaving in the way that our metropolitan citizens are behaving in the world, now that there has been a progression, say the Enlightenment, that was powered by indentured servitude in the agricultural region. That was allowable because we hadn't yet discovered how damaging our agricultural pursuits on the country, on the land had been. So it was hapless delusion and optimism. Now we have all the records, so we have obtained a yield from this period, and all of these things can now be celebrated by everyone. And the concept that is clearly kind of written in the subtext of the behavior of these metropolitan citizens is that they're expecting to be waited on hand and foot on silver plates by the peasants in the fields. But unfortunately, you've really got to traverse your family history, your ancestral line, and realize that that's you. That's you. Yeah, we're not chaining you up and intending on pressing you into servitude on our land base. This is a collective rearrangement of our entire systems. It just happens that my family's trajectory is come through multiple manifestations of civilized inner city urban civilization and expansion, and that I have landed in a region, and so I have the historical and the kind of the example and the technology to make a relevant position, to stake my argument in this way. And so do all of you. And this is what I'm trying to reinforce and get, like, we all have this option, and anyone doing this should be taken extremely seriously. And there needs to be a little bit of license for theatrical manifestations, because there always has been. Some of the more, like, you could go and cherry pick out some of my talks on here and find things and put them out of context and have horrific things, but it doesn't matter. It's a whole thing. And my rebuttal to that is quite simple. It's like, well, I'm watching Wednesday at the moment, and that's a pretty fucking gory, horrific tale that is clearly, a far higher level of exposure to violence than I was ever exposed to. When I compare it to the previous films of the Addams Family that I experienced as a child, we've gone from metaphor and tongue-in-cheek and parody and symbolic, humor, to all-out gore and wickedness. And you might think, well, why is he using the Addams Family to make a reference? Well, because the Addams Family is a parody of silent films and the over-the-top, like, drama, that operatic, almost like, theater-like drama that was seen in the height of silent films and early cinema. And it's wonderful. It's far more difficult to pin down than just, it's like a gothic, horror, like porn. It's not that. I just told you what it is. It's a parody of early cinema, done wonderfully, using horror and gothic literary license with humor added. That's what it is. Like, no offense to the new show that's going. It's okay. It's leaning far too much on CGI and stealing, kind of, I don't know. See, the Addams Family wasn't stealing; it was parodying. So to make a serious manifestation that whatever from the Addams Family and turning it into kind of a teen drama with tons of like gruesome visual, that's weird. That's a weird thing to have done. And it's showing that there is a trajectory that is off the rails with its predecessors, with its previous iterations, because the whole thing is. And it's like there is. So basically the movement is, it's like, you take your computer or your phone and you go and find out, or you go and discover what your ancestors have given you and that you've squandered. Very much like I think it's in the Odyssey where they get trapped in a palace of a siren, I think it is, eating these ambrosia eating these things that keep them asleep. This is, but it's every metropolitan region in the world, all connected by this, all with an amplification. Everyone just keeps turning the volume up. When I've been in jam rooms with playing music with a band as a singer, there's been times where I've walked out and I can't hear because every single person keeps playing louder and turning their fucking volume up on their amplifier. And this is an expression of, a side effect of the introduction of electricity to acoustic vibrating, metal strings and such. And it's not, I'm not anti that. I love electric guitar, but it's just a phenomenon. Now, this is what the entire world is doing right now. Everybody is turning the volume up. And so even this is like, think of noise complaints. So basically, like, I'm a rock and roll singer. Sometimes even a heavy metal singer. How many musical venues have been shut down for noise complaints? Okay. Well, I live an hour outside of a metropolitan region, or I would be, and I'm sending a noise complaint to the entire metropolitan region, but it's not just noise. And this is like, there is no way to not acknowledge this. You have to acknowledge. And I'm not some type of Puritan Luddite. I'm just saying this is the phenomenon you are all captured by. And it's because you are under constant siege by unseen, nefarious parties. And your subconscious knows it. Most of the kind of metaphysical things, I'm trying to show my findings within this kind of this, you can call it woo-woo, but it's really not. It's pattern recognition, and it's a deeper understanding of how we manifest our environments and subconscious interactions, which we're all having between each other and between animals and plants and these things. Because how else would it be working? It's just that with all the noise and distraction, it's very hard to heighten these skills. And so it's a wonderful thing that we have these tools. And it's quite an uphill battle, because if you're hyper stimulated, you're going to be repulsed by, monotonous, or what you see as monotonous, boring, ultra technical, slow and steady, like, interaction with the environment. And we live in a paradigm where that even within the metropolitan zones has been treated as a mental impairment and medicated with stimulants. So that's where we're at. We have a junkie prime minister who's addicted to bass, leading us all into the fucking gallows, leading us all into an abattoir, rather than a harmonious, like, manifestation of the true nature of what Australia truly should be experiencing, is an agricultural revolution, because it is what your ancestors have fought and died for thousands and thousands of years. And it's an absolute travesty. We have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hectares under monocultural agriculture, industrialized, all held in financial manifestations in the stock market and Wall Street, that are holding the entire world as prisoner to manifest their very humble desires onto the world. But it's not ever going to work, because the solutions are so simple. It's so cheap to do it. We have, and most importantly of all, you don't need to go and go off into the fucking jungle or into the bush or into the outback by yourself, because we have a support system. So these are all major things. This is it's a reverse renaissance, in which, because we have the interconnection, we will more than likely experience a sustainable agricultural revolution. Right? When people talk about sustainable agriculture, you get kind of bored. You're like, oh, it's like, no, it's going to be a commercially driven, a capitalistically driven sustainable agricultural revolution. And once people are out of the hostile, war zone of our metropolitan regions, and they realize that we're all interconnected by this thing, there will be a cultural revolution as well, a cultural renaissance of art, music, literature, poetry, like beauty, and even sport. Even sport, sport thrives. If you want to get down to the Aussie, fucking sport, fucking AFL, whatever, sport will thrive in these environments. I was lucky enough to grow up in a place colloquially known as the Hills in Western Australia, which is a big region. The sport that went on there, because they were townships, they were unique townships that all had a little bit of a different flavour. Very different than this splattering of suburbia. Very different. And so, like, a beautiful sporting culture was present there. But even within I could see that was already starting to deteriorate, because there was so much, in the recent history, that you could see that this used to be a different scenario. And this is the same case when I would take my children in to play hockey in the greater kind of Wheatbelt area, because I relocated to regional. This was the same, but these regions are even worsely, like, they've been affected even worse because of this industrialized agriculture. And it's absolutely been horrific to everyone. And there's absolutely no shortage of land or water or anything. It's just, we need to innovate in a supportive environment. And so, like, there's two ways I could declare war on the Prime Minister and the Labor Party. But the Prime Minister and the Labor Party has its roots in shearing. Now, the reason it has its roots in shearing is because, well, shearing was one of the only industrial type, mass movements of people on the country. Because we were a monoculture kind of country. We had a lot of places. The English people, had already had their previous revolution of, like, sheep after the Black Death, after the plague. And so it was completely obvious that we would extend that. And we just had absolutely no clue that this would be this destructive. And this is the same, but kind of amplified. It's like you take a ghost town, in the middle of the wheat belt or something. When there's plenty of them. There might be 10 people living there. You put 100 people there in this current moment and give it 10 years, and it's like you have no idea what could emerge there. And at the end of the day, you're an hour or two away from these urban zones, but we need to collectively do this at the same time and cooperatively, not communistically. See, the communists had one trick. They dragged everyone from the thing, they industrialize their agriculture, and they poke everyone in the city and they sell them shit. That's it. That's it ends there. And you can't even blame them, because there was an egotistical urge by everyone to manifest the peak of civilization. And this has already happened. It's called New York City. The president of the United States is the king of New York City, as far as the history books will say. But that's not, in this moment, precisely an advantage. But again, he needs to be celebrated, or at least, what did I say yesterday? Not celebrated, but at least recognized. He needs to be recognized as that through his period. And I have never felt that he doesn't have open ears to learn. And it's actually funny. It's like what New York City was. And again, we have New York City. It is astonishingly beautiful if you know how to look at it. It is astonishingly high, intensive human organization. That's beautiful. And it's beautiful if you expand it to a greater region. And so it's like this. It's like hand in hand. But we just have not had the confidence or the conditions or I was going to say freedoms, but that's not actually true. We've had the freedoms. We just haven't had the right moment in time and the right people and the right technologies and the right global climate to have the conversation. And now we do. And the way I describe this, I know that Donald Trump's from Scotland, or his mother was from Scotland, the MacLeod clan, and I have a similar thing with the Cameron clan. It's like I have a similar manifestation to do with my family's commitment to Hobart. Very different. Yeah, Hobart was at the bottom of the world. Completely off the fucking radar compared to New York City. Was the most famous city in the most loud and garish regions ever existed. But that's comparative kind of thing. So it's like, okay, all right, well, let's get back to Scotland, and play a round of golf. How do I get there? Do you think I could take some sheep with me on the way? Let's get back to that discussion. And within that discussion, which is all kind of, theatrical and over the top and wanky, because it needs to be, because it's got to appeal to New York City, then I just about think we can kind of handle that. And then if we both look down and kind of, and considering my roots are English, my paternal roots are English, I said, well, yeah, don't forget about England, because I wouldn't be able to have this conversation if it wasn't for them. We wouldn't have anything. And I don't see any problem there. And so it's like, what are we in? We're in a revolution of conversation, of dialogue between the regional areas. And this is the most exciting bit, because I'm a nerd, is like, this is my superheroes within my actual thing of like sustainable, reforestate, all these things, is there's a few of them. There's like superstars in this. I think there's John D. Liu in the Laos Plateau in China, so instantly there. China, I know that China is working on this. So China, I don't see a problem. And China and Russia are both different in their ways. So they're able, they basically, the story of them is, well, they want to do that on their own. And they're going to be a little bit less in dialogue. And I guess they would appreciate a little bit less pressure on their border and a little bit more pressure observed within the own citizenship and the own behavior and the own economic things of the citizens of the other regions, so of the British Empire, former British Empire, and of the American Empire. But the rock stars of this movement, and non-movement, the rock stars of this phenomenon will be people like, there's a guy, I feel shit because I don't remember his name, who went and dug these little pits in Africa that basically all it did is, instead of just flat where everything blows off, the seeds and organic matter would fall in this pit and would have like an 80% increase in revegetation. And so he just wandered out, just fucking digging a little pit, one after the other, just with I think it's called an addle. Well, we call it a mattock. It's just a little hoe. It's like just that. There's a thing you could watch, The Man Who Planted Trees. It just goes out and plants trees. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm just planting digital trees, or I'm attempting to, and when I look at all my work, I see a forest. But it's a forest of pixels and digits, and it's a forest to kind of, I'm just the comedian that's opening up for these guys who are the real rock stars. You know, the rock stars of township architecture, which I think the United States actually has a really, really good representation of. And as long as we collectively understand that this is a post World War II phenomenon, and we stop looking in the wrong places and we start looking in the right places, and we renew optimism towards actual physical construction, but not yes, New York City is it is wonderful. Okay, Tokyo's wonderful, London's wonderful, Sydney's wonderful. They're all wonderful. Okay, but they should be being fine-tuned rather than expanded. And they should immediately go towards heritage, referencing heritage build, because that's more important to me. And I have the experience of construction to talk about that. I don't care about the fucking multi-level concrete poured pillar and fucking facade buildings, whatever shape, whatever color. I don't fucking give a shit. I do not fucking care, and I never fucking will. And I actually have the experience to say that. They are not really culturally important. They are a fucking cardboard box, in my determination. Cardboard box filled with fucking IKEA furniture. I do not give a shit. The Empire State Building, yes, amazing. The Chrysler Building, amazing. All the Chicago architect, amazing. A lot of architecture in Hobart, amazing. That's what should be being drawn upon to reinvigorate the urban areas and to find the skills around the world and bring them in order to connect those supply chains to restart up that project, to de-industrialize in one sense, but these were always industrial processes, architecture and construction and masonry and city town planning and building was always industrial, but it was it's different. It's not. It's very similar, like processed food. These buildings that are just stone, stone upon stone and architecture and things like that. They're like, and beauty and the whole incorporated thing, which employs people, it houses people, it does all these things. You have ancillary benefits from like quarrying and resource extraction, water storage. If we go to that high level of planning and of architecture within the whole scheme, that's like the organic food of building and of planning and of development. Whereas these bungalows, this suburbia is fast food, and or it's processed food, it's chicken nuggets, and it's like we're gonna hit a point where I don't need to really attack it, because it's going to reevaluate itself on a global market, because our technologies are going to re-enable this type of construction with a far less intensive workforce. And so that's the trade-off. Why would you live in one of these cardboard boxes filled with IKEA furniture? Why? And then that stimulus that pressure will kind of actually put pressure on these areas to redesign and readapt. And I'm actually optimistic. There's so many good options. They're far from like the worst manifestation of urban or semi-urban dwellings. And there's so much space in between them, and so much. So they're like it's a good start, but the largest problem is the monotonous, the homogeneity. I don't even know if that's a word, of the regions, and there will be a resistance, I would say, from experimental concepts being projected onto them. But the real revolution is taking place in communication, hopefully in a Renaissance style of art, music, and all these things on top of it, as kind of just the cultural element, not necessarily even incorporated into capitalism, although it should be incorporated into these tech things. It's like, well, Zuckerberg, well, Google, well, YouTube, well, Instagram, any one of these things. It's like, if you're going to monetize these things, you should install a reverse arbitrage metric, and so there is a different exchange rate for people that are living outside of urban areas. This way we don't get, French tourists traveling to Thailand paying two slaves to fucking build a house in the jungle and filming it and making, hundreds of thousands of dollars on YouTube, and paying these two individuals nothing. That's not going to fly. There will be vigilante fucking exposés of this type of behavior. And it's an absolutely negative manifestation on global finances and global distribution of technology. These people have the skills. You don't have skills. You've bought a GoPro and a fucking drone, and you have an internet connection in your apartment in fucking Paris. No, fuck off. Fuck off. You've got plenty of chateaus and agricultural land, all these things, and you have a population that is radically fucking deteriorated towards what it once was. The bank that you're sitting on, though, is the cultural bank, because you have some of the best manifestations of the height of our civilization. So this is an accurate telling of market value, of cultural value, of expressions of sustainable development. And my particular manifestation of this, as I said, is from the tip of Hobart in Tasmania to the southern tip of Hobart in Tasmania,
all the way to the northern tip of Scotland, there is a never-ending migration of sheep, animals, resources, trades, skills, musicians, performers, whatever. And a lot of these will have permanent residents somewhere along that trail. And it's a story. All we have is stories, and that's a story, and that's what I'm working on. At the moment, I have that story. I have this dialogue. I have this conversation. I have my father's estate ready and waiting for me to go and pop some rocks on top of another there and start doing this. None of this is outside of my abilities. Once I feel like I'm not continually under threat by divisive references and by, greedy individuals from metropolitan regions. It's going to change. A lot of people say it's got to stop. It's like it's going to change. It has to. There will be a migration of very learned, very able individuals to these areas, and they will bolster a kind of haphazard, haphazard, rapid, rampant rambling coming from my mouth into our systems, and they will circumvent all this urban, backstopping and self-serving administration that is actively trying to prevent Australia from emerging at the moment. And to sum it up, basically, I think it's described as scarcity. There is a scarcity mindset because it is being metropolitanly driven. And there is a disconnection between, the realities of construction and of creation of environmentally sound projects, because you can only do so much with a window garden or a window box or a little plant pot on your balcony in your urban inner city, and even a suburban quarter acre, half acre. They're not half acre anymore. They're like a tenth of an acre. There's only so much you can do. It only instills you with so much capacity to be able to explore that in your mind. So yeah, I was going to say something, but I completely forgot. I'm going to quickly just, like I said, the Bible. So I'll do that because I think it's a gimmick. Don't have these either. I would be smoking weed if I would grow it. But it's illegal to buy it. And because it's an agricultural product, I don't buy it from doctors, because what the fuck would doctors know about growing plants? Pretty simple. And so until I can get back to a piece of property where I'm legally entitled to grow a plant, then I'm stuck with this, which has a pretty negative effect. I think it's odd to go to a shop that's filled with bongs and not be able to buy some marijuana, and you can buy this, which has God knows what in it. Anyway, let's flick random. There we go. Psalm 11:9, 119, 64. The earth, O Lord, is full of your mercy. Teach me your statutes. Teth. You have dealt well with your servant, O Lord, according to your word. Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe your commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep your precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in your law. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. The law of your mouth is better to me than 1,000 coins of gold and silver. Yeah. Yep. Better. It doesn't say don't use gold and silver, because I'm probably going to have to use gold and silver. Because basically the digital currency is a manifestation from the metropolitan regions. It doesn't make sense anywhere else, because you are stuck in there's no one to call. There's no one. There's nothing. It just all vanishes. Everything vanishes under scrutiny. It's the worst manifestation of debasement of currency that there's ever been, of debasement of value. It's an absolute daydream that you're all participating in, and it's time to wake up. So now I've got the dictionary. I'm going to take 5 words. Grave. Grave. And then just below it, dig one's own grave. Rebel. Hour. Actually, no, it's credit. Credit hour, to be more specific. That's 3. Projection. Retort. And then listen to this, retort. And tell me whether you think that this might explain something. What comes to your mind when I read this description? Chem, a vessel, commonly a glass bulb with a long neck bent downwards, used for distilling or decomposing substances by heat. Au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir.